Welcome, everybody. My name is Sergey Gavrilets. I'm one of the organizers of this webinar series. Pete Richerson, co-organizer, is also here. And this series is sponsored by the Center for the Dynamics of Social Complexity and the National Institute for Mathematical and Biological Synthesis here in Knoxville. So we're very happy to have you guys here. We had a very successful webinar last semester, and I'm sure this one will also be great. So let me just start by saying a few words about the whole idea of this webinar. It's to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the descent of man. In 1859, Darwin published his most famous book on the origin of species. And there he promised that light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history. In 12 years, he delivered, and it was the book that we are celebrating now, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex. Actually, the anniversary itself will be in 3 weeks from today. And the book is really brilliant, and it's fair to say that it foreshadows many modern theories of human origins and evolution. And that's kind of what we'll be focusing in this webinar series. And there are many different insights in this book, but I want to emphasize just 3 of them. And the first one is that humans, like every other species, are a modified descendant of some pre-existing form. And for us, it's apes. And the second one is culture and cultural evolution. They are particularly important in human origins and human evolution. Darwin explicitly says in his book that kind of classical natural selection most likely played a very subordinate role in the evolution of humans, at least at later stages. And he also talked about inheritance of acquired variation there, culturally acquired variation. And the third insight is about the importance of cooperation for the origin of our species. Cooperation and moral sense have evolved from tendencies for mutual aid, which Darwin said are common to most social animals. And it's kind of interesting that his first insight was fully embraced by modern evolutionary synthesis in the 30s and 40s of the past century. His last insight was largely ignored there, and only in the 60s, after the work by Hamilton and Travers, cooperation moved to the forefront of scientific research, and now it's still exploding. And his second insight about the importance of culture and inheritance of acquired variation was largely rejected by modern evolutionary synthesis. It's kind of interesting historical note. So there are many implications of his work as far as fundamental research is concerned. But there are many things that also concern us in our everyday life. I'm sure some of you wonder, perhaps every day, why other people do things that they do, say things that they say, or believe in things that they believe. But Darwin's book and the research that it stimulated offers some possible explanations of why this happens. There are, of course, biological roots underlying many features of our behavior. Competition, genetic relatedness, drive for sex, for power, and things like that. Social learning can bring enormous benefits by transferring beneficial traits and behaviors and innovations from some people to other people. But social learning also brought new forces constraining and driving our behavior: morality, social norms, and institutions. And these things can act in a positive way, but can also act in a very negative way. Like I have a quote here: "The tradition of all dead generations waits like a nightmare on the brain of the living." That's a quote from Marx. And then, as a result of social learning and reliance on it, we evolve very strong sense of conformity. We have ability to internalize systems of beliefs, religious, political, and so on. But also it makes us very vulnerable to propaganda, political and advertisement and teaching and whatever. And cooperation. Again, cooperation can bring enormous benefits due to economy of scale, due to division of labor. Cooperation also results in the emergence of specific coalitionary psychology that can bring us together if our group faces or we perceive that there is a challenge. But it can also cause very negative or hostile reaction to others who differ from us in their looks, behavior, or beliefs. So we'll be talking about many of these topics in this series, and we have a great lineup of 12 speakers. We'll start today and it will end in April. Most of the seminars, webinars will start at 11:45 Eastern time, but there will be some differences, so pay attention. I also want to draw your attention to a special collection of the new journal Evolutionary Human Sciences that will be coming out in a few weeks. And it's something that Peter Richerson, France, Deval, and I were guest editing. So there is a lot of exciting things going on. And if you want to know more about recent developments and get a bigger picture of what's going on, I would recommend you a couple of books. The book by Joe here, Henrik, The Secret of Our Success, and Carl van Schaik book, The Primate Origins of Human Nature. They came out a couple of years ago, and this is really a great book. And then there is a new one that is coming out, I believe, in a month by Leslie Newson and Pete Richerson here, The Story of Us. And I also highly recommend this book to you.